Hello and welcome back once again to the channel. My name is Hollow and today we're talking about improvement, specifically how to get better at Valorant as fast as possible. Luckily, it's not actually that complicated and the method is quite tried and tested because, well, it works just like any skill and it worked for me in CS for years. Minimal variation, consistent practice, and specific practice at that. When you're looking to improve at something, you need to be consistent. You'll learn piano way faster if you play every day compared to playing just once a week, obviously. And when you're trying to win as much as possible, you need minimal variation to drastically improve your understanding and ability at one thing rather than 100 things at once, kinda poorly. And when you're trying to achieve something, you should know what it is you're after and close off everything that isn't that specific thing. Today, I'm gonna give you some clear examples and explanations of what to work on to improve as fast as possible at Valorant. This comes from the perspective of someone who was pushing Supreme in CSGO and Plat 1 in Siege, for whatever worth that has to you. Anyway, let's get started with the video. Let's start with the obvious and basically the quickest principle to talk about, which is consistency. Consistency is a very simple concept, but it's actually very easy to mess up. You need to maintain not only your skill, but your progress as a player, and to do that, you need to play every day. Each time you practice something and get a good night's rest, you come back the next day better at it. Playing for 20 hours every day really isn't that much more effective than, say, 10 hours every day. What we care about is the minimum you play. Try to make sure that you're playing every day for at least, let's say, one game, because it's extremely important and worth to maintain your skill if you otherwise wouldn't have got any games in that day. Each time you take a full day break, you have a longer period the next time you play for warming up, before you even reach the point you were at previously to then continue progressing. If we maintain consistent progress and play, warm-up time is short and progression is constant. Yes, you can certainly overdo it, like that 20 hours a day example, but making sure you log on some time in on days that you otherwise weren't going to is what matters most. If you're always warmed up, you don't have any time to rust. So how do you warm up? How do you improve mechanically at an FPS? It's actually really simple. At the end of the day, no utility in this game will save you from someone who just has a better shot most of the time. To win, you have to shoot your opponents. So get better at your flick accuracy, your confidence with sprays. Practice your aim and spray control in the shooting range at medium and hard for, say, 5 to 10 minutes at least each day. And what this does is it builds up your muscle memory for flicking, and that kicks in before long, letting you worry more about your positioning and strategy more than just specifically hitting shots. The more your body just reacts with the correct answer to the situation without you even needing to think about it, the more space you have to plan out clever outplays and strats and proper use of your utility. Plus, the thing that made me win games the most in CS, and so far the same thing goes in Valorant, is being able to entry frag. That just comes down to mechanical skill, you know, that ability to tap headshot or spray someone right off the bat at the start of a round, which then opens up whatever site you're pushing. Nothing makes me more confident at tap headshotting than being consistent with my aim training, and then just out shooting my opponents by default. You can jump into the shooting range and change the settings however you want. You could go easy, medium, or hard, which changes the time between the targets, how long they're available before the next one appears. Or go further and set it up so they move around or even have armor. As always though, try to limit your variation to start with, but when things get a bit too easy and you get way more consistent, add more difficulty. Then after that, you could consider CSGO aim training maps for even more variety after that, if Valorant's shooting range just isn't enough at one point. Next, let's talk about mouse sensitivity. You probably need to lower your sense. Try lowering your sense and get used to it. Pros use low sensitivity commonly because it forces you to use your arm to move the mouse and aim instead of your wrist, which is actually easier long term for aiming and accuracy. It's really important you have the correct sense for you as well. In games like CS, you don't need to be doing 1080 spins while building your 1x1 fort in Fortnite. It's all about weapon accuracy and the better shot in general. Pros use a low sense for a reason. There's less gaps in the angles that you're confident at. You're more precise with movement in general. But I must warn you, this is hard to get used to at first. When you lower your sense, it's almost like learning to ride a bike for the first time. It just takes some practice, and once you get used to the lower sensitivity, it's really good. Again, the shooting range is ideal for this because it practices the movement and you learn the distances that you need to move your arm to hit those shots. A lot of pros in CSGO use 400 DPI on their mouse and then vary their in-game sense. Personally, I run 800 DPI on my mouse and a 0.4 sense in game, and I find that great right now, but I may actually lower it in the future to use my arm even more. Naturally, you do need good mouse room for this type of movement. You're using the mouse a lot, which is why I have some big mouse mats on my desk. Now let's talk about crosshairs, because if you're using the default, you probably want to change that. So yeah, this is quite personal actually to your own preferences. However, for God's sake, you really should take off that silly dynamic crosshair. A lot of games do this, and all it kind of does is make it harder to be accurate with your shots or your spray control because it's such a ridiculously big crosshair once you get spraying. We get it. You have less accuracy when moving and during a spray. Once you take 2 seconds to acknowledge this and stand still when you're shooting and crouch during a spray, you no longer need the dynamic crosshair. The tighter and less invasive the crosshair is on your screen, the better it is in my experience. Look at the pro or competitive players again here if you need to. They all generally have small and tight crosshairs that are static. It's so they can easily see the target in front of them and accurately tap those heads. The crosshair being about the size of a head at medium range feels perfect to me, and you might have a different opinion, and that's totally fine. There's so many ways to configure and manipulate your crosshair in Valorant, which is great, so you should make use of it. Find what works for you, but you know my opinion at least. Time to talk maps and callouts. Generally, outplaying opponents with positioning and better info between you and your team allows for better strategy and use of utility. If I were to call out, say, 2 pushing shower, and you have no idea where that is, you're obviously going to have a harder time not being shot in the back and getting those kills. The blitz maps are actually a great resource to start with, but can be pretty lacking on these specific callouts. You can make use of the in-game ping system and follow in-game callouts like this too, but generally they're vague compared to specific ones that players are deciding right now. Try to pay attention and learn the maps and callouts however you can, be that by watching high-level streams and listening to the way they call things, practice the map in customs yourself. There's good YouTube guides out there already, so you could go watch some of those. However, while players are deciding callouts, there's already a lot of dumb ones that I do not agree with. NA and EU generally have different callouts to the maps too. What I think matters most is that a callout is clear and obvious to someone who doesn't know the callout, but they can still understand it. Short and long for short and long corridors on the map is something anyone can understand. Heaven for a high up window, and hell for under that window. Valorant is pretty fantastic for this actually in its map design. Let's say you're walking up mid of Split, and you walk up to what many players are calling B Heaven currently, the office. You'll pass through a small room in between. This room is called the mail room, or mail for short, and it's obvious why. It has mailboxes for the offices. That's good, simple design, you can see why it's called mail, anyone can understand that call and why it's called that. So strive to have clear and obvious, reasonable calls like that with whatever you're learning or whether you're using your own. I was thinking about making my own guide for each map, but I might need to do it on my own channel instead, so let me know if there's any interest in that. Here's an obvious one for a game using special characters to choose between. Stick to one role and character. It's surprising how impactful characters in Valorant actually are. Their abilities can be round winning consistently with proper use. Someone who uses a sonar arrow on Sova effectively at the right moment can reveal which site is in full danger before the actual attack. It could catch out someone flanking behind you or help you push onto a site and so on. Compared to someone who's just throwing sonar arrows in useless places, it's huge. And that obviously goes for every ability in the game. If you're using your character ineffectively, well, what's the point of you even having those abilities? It's important you know what every character can do, but while you're learning, try stick to one character and become solid and proficient with those abilities to make a massive impact on your chances at winning. If you're looking to play entry frag, for example, Phoenix, Breach, or Raze are all fantastic choices because their kits are made for pushing into combat with flashes and other aggressive abilities. So you're looking to pick a character whose playstyle matches what you're looking to do. Sage or Brimstone make fantastic supportive characters who should hang back in a fight rather than be the first one on the scene, since their kits benefit the team more through the duration of a round rather than right at the start. Are you looking to entry frag? Are you looking to be support? Are you looking to be that utility? Are you looking to smoke off a site? You know, what are you looking to do? And pick a character based on that and really learn it. Let's move on to the final principle for improvement as we really hammer home the minimal variance point. Stick to one side to attack and one side to defend by default until you're very confident. Minimal variance in as much as you can, be it maps, sensitivity, characters, all of these help, but you can go deeper. Let's say you're on bind, for example. Stick to the mid push or defense and get really comfortable and, more importantly, confident at holding or pushing a specific place on the map. When you know the timings of when to throw a nade because they're turning that corner usually at this point, or when you should push because there's been a nice gap of time, when to hold an angle, where to pre-aim, when to pre-fire, you become a powerhouse of one specific point of the map. And ideally, you pick a place where pushing and defense works well. That's why I said mid, because the midpoint of most maps opens up everything. If I'm on attack and I can kill and dismantle the defenders holding mid, I decide the pace of that round. Hell, even if I don't kill the mid defenders but I force them out and they run away, well, now we've opened up mid and we can choose which site to attack based on where those mid defenders were running, naturally going to the least defended site. Plus, on the map Haven, if I were to go second mid and kill the garage player, I could go into C site straight away from there, or go deeper and catch someone rotating from B, or head beyond that to their spawn and catch rotators from A, and they never expect you to be there. There's things like that on every map because they're quite well designed. So choose an attacking side, choose a defending side, and get really confident on one place on each map. So in conclusion, become very good at one thing or one style and try to master it, and you'll make massive progress as a player, win a lot more compared to a player doing many things poorly. But that'll do for this video. Those are the concepts or principles that see me through my progress in Valorant or previous competitive shooters, and I've always found that it works very well for me. If you have any extra tips that you find helpful, share them in the comments, you might help someone, and make sure to hit like if this video helped you at all. Good luck in Valorant, guys, but for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and I'll see you next time.